Welcome to Talks with Summer, seeing the world through the eyes of another. Today I have with me Laetitia Barbier. French-born Laetitia is an independent scholar as well as a professional tarot reader and teacher. She earned a bachelor's degree in art history from La Sorbonne University in 2009. Laetitia has worked with Morbid Anatomy as a programming director, head librarian, and occasional curator. Her book Tarot and Divination Cards, a Visual Archive, was published in 2021 with a foreword by Rachel Pollack. Along with her friend Lou Benish, she's the co-curator of Camina Tarot. As a writer and scholar, she has the privilege of collaborating with the iconic French Maître Cartier Grimaud, notably on the exquisite re-release of the 1930s Tarot de Marseille and Belline Oracle. Laetitia has lectured, taught, and read cards for various cultural institutions in the US and around the world, including such as Greenwood Cemetery, Fotografiska, New York, the College of Psychic Studies in London, or the Tokyo Tarot Museum. She lives in Brooklyn, New York. Welcome, Laetitia. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much, Summer, for having me. Well, you said a lot in the bio. My name is Laetitia Barbier. I live in Brooklyn, in New York. I've been living in the US for the past 14 years. My background is in art history, and I enjoy images and their magic, which is why I landed into the world of tarot. And now it's what I do all the time. And I feel very blessed to be able to do this.
Where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about your childhood days.
Yeah, so I grew up in France. I grew up in a town named Rueil-Malmaison, which is about an hour away from Paris by car. It is famous for being one of the residents of Napoleon, the emperor. And since it's going to be the topic of today, wife the Empress Joséphine de Beauharnais used to ask for the service of a very famous cartomancer, also a palm reader, whose name was Mademoiselle Lenormand. And apparently Lenormand came to my hometown back in the early 19th century. So I think it's very funny that I grew up there. I was brought up Catholic, so I used to go to church, not on a very regular basis, but in France we have a lot of very beautiful churches, and I think that my love for iconography came from that, and I was really moved and smitten by statues and paintings, specifically of the Virgin Mary, Saint Michael as well. It's something that pursued me for many, many years after that. And I think this is the reason I was interested in doing art history at the first place, religious iconography, and trying to understand how those images have power. They were haunted by the divine. And to this day, if I'm in a country with churches like Italy or Mexico or France, for that matter, I can't pass by a church without going inside. So I love very much.
I visited Italy too a couple of years back, and the churches are so beautiful. I think you can spend your head up and keep looking at all the beautiful artwork, and it was quite an experience.
Yeah, and it's also like, it has a symbolic language of its own, like the tarot. So when you go in, you don't necessarily understand a lot, but then when you start reading about the saints, their history, their attributes, it's very much like tarot cards. They have, like specific objects that they carry or animal that they are near with, and so you start to understand what's happening on the stained glasses, the stories that are told, and everything becomes alive. So you can spend, maybe not a lifetime, but I guess, a good 10 years visiting the same church like every week and then learning new things on a regular basis. And that's something that I'm really attached to. I'm really interested in, art and architecture and history. And I think this is part of what I enjoy doing. I enjoy getting lost in cities and trying to understand images. And so again, if you narrow it down, that's why the tarot was the perfect medium for me, because it involves getting lost and trying to find your way back through iconography.
So my next question was actually, you answered it a little bit, but I would still ask you, what motivated you to become an intuitive counselor and tarot reader? Or in other words, how did you take this path in life that you are on? Also, because there's the art side of it and there's the imagery of it, but then there's the other side, which is all the the inner side of it. So I wanted to know more about that.
Yeah, well, I've told that story a couple of times, but I'll tell you, Summer, since you don't know, since you know, I didn't decide to do this. It was not my pursuit. I had a very different stories for myself. I've read cards for a very long time, and I always had a spiritual practice, and it was always very idiosyncratic. Like I was when I was a kid, like a teen, I used to do witchcraft, and I had like a little shrine with like images that I love, and I've always prayed. I discovered the tarot when I was 11, and I was very bad at reading, I'm sure. But where I used to go with my tarot deck and during recess, and I'll do love readings for my friends. But so it was always a part, like it was always a very private part of my life. I was in 2017. I was in a really strong transition period, and I went to see a medium. And the medium, her name is Lauren Thibodeau. She's in Lilydale, if you want to track her down. She told me, "Oh, but Letty," like I was doing a consultation with her, and she told me, "Oh, but Letty, you read cards, right? You should do that. This is what you are supposed to do." And she gave me all sorts of little details on how I would go back to this intuitive pull. And I was kind of like, oh, that's crazy, So should I do this? And so I was amused by the idea, and I brought some of my tarot books from France, and I told that to my friends, and my friends were like, oh, like that will be such a fun idea, right? Like you'd be so good at it, though, and so I took it seriously, but not really. And then 6 months later, I had a consultation with my friend's mother-in-law. Is that no mother-in-law? Stepmom, the new wife of her dad. And she had been a tarot reader since the 70s. And she was like, she's the old school, really old school. And she told me the exact same thing as the medium. And so that second time, I was not, and it was really detailed. Like one of the things that came in both reading was like, you're gonna get back your intuitive gift through automatic writing. It was it's not random, but like it's really specific. And so the second time I took it seriously, and then that's what I did. And it's just, that's the thing I keep repeating in interviews. And so I apologize if it's not a scoop, but the way it felt like retrieving a language, like my native language is French. And so it's like, like living in the US, I had forgotten to speak French, and then suddenly French was coming back, and I was able to speak and understand French. Retrieving tarot felt like that. I didn't have to relearn anything. It was just the fold had been made a long time ago, but I was not really aware of it. And so that's the way it came back. And the one thing that was really interesting for me as well is to understand that the way I was looking at art was the way I was going to look at cards. And when you do art history, when you do like painting analysis, you're supposed to look at all sorts of stratas of information. But there is something, and there's somehow there is all sorts of things that looking at an image. And some of the things are very personal to the author of the image. Some of those things speaks about the culture he lived in. Some of the things, he or she, some of the things talk about specifics of that time. And as an art historian, you're supposed to retrieve all those little tracks, but they're all in the image. And with the tarot, it's the same. When I look at the card, I can see different stratas of the person's life. Some things that might be part of their present or their past, or potentially their future, but I'm not necessarily responding to the future. But it's just like there is all sorts of things going on, and my role is a little bit like an archaeologist. I have to peel off all those layers so I can give information to the person. So that's the way it works for me.
It is so interesting because, first of all, I'm also an artist, and all these metaphysical realms is I connect to all these things a lot, and these are the two things which I love a lot. And hearing you talk about is so interesting for me. And I've always also said that energy is my first language, and now when I'm doing this podcast and I've guests and all of them, and we are talking about all these things, and I feel like it's also come back for me. My how I speak is not my language, but energy is my first language. So I was almost relating your story to myself too.
Yeah, I think it's such a poetic line, you know, like the energy is my first language. It feels so true to me. And it's just, I think it's interesting, artists and whoever we are, you know, like energy workers, you know, we're doing the same work, you know, like I truly see what I do as an art form. And I think that artists, very much like seers, you know, they can plug into, you know, an universal layer, and they can use it for all sorts of we can use it for all sorts of things, you know, like to heal people, advise them, you know, see, you know, like some, I mean, there's so many interesting artists who were, you know, like who were visionary in their own ways, you know, who saw the future. One of the, you know, one of them, which I love, of course, is Pamela Coleman Smith, who did the illustration and so much more for the Rider-Waite Smith tarot deck. There is this image that she created. Pamela Coleman Smith grew up in Brooklyn and in Jamaica, and then London. Like she left for London after that. Her grandfather was the mayor of Brooklyn, and she did university in Pratt. So like really, you know, like she was a Brooklynite, and I love her for that too. And she did this picture of her grandfather. I think it was in 1905 or something, and it's her grandfather looking at Manhattan from Brooklyn, and there is all those buildings, all those this skyline, you know, like very tall buildings, but there were no skyscraper at the time in Manhattan. You know, she just saw it. Like Manhattan at the time was flat, like Paris, you know, and so she was able to foresee something. You know, the fact that Manhattan will have a skyline and it would look like this kind of like modern metropolis. So artists are capable of this. Artists and seers were the same, you know, energy is our first language, to quote you back, Summer.
This is so interesting for me because I remember when I took your class also, there were so many, I was like, I didn't even have the slightest clue about this one card, and you have like a storehouse and treasure of information and anecdotes about what goes behind that one image. And because art is my love, and I feel like it's so fascinating to know all these stories. I could hear them for a long time. So I hope that people are going to love hearing these.
Well, thank you. So am I, you know, like I love, that's why it's like, it's such interesting, fulfilling topics.
Yes. So is there any incident which you would share which shaped your life?
Incident, I don't know. I think that I do believe I have special protection. Like, you know, I do believe that I escaped death a couple of times. You know, so, you know, I mean, there is that time I almost drowned in a swimming pool because I was stupid and young, and I jumped, you know, like the swimming pool had a tarp on it. And I decided, oh, well, that'd be fun if I just jump on the tarp. And I jumped on the tarp, and with the pressure of the water, the tarp rolled over me, and I just sink in the water. So I couldn't move anymore because I was like wrapped in the plastic. And then I was just like, so, and for basically like maybe 25 seconds, I just couldn't move underwater. So like, and then I managed, the water moved in such a place that I managed. But so I escaped death that time. There is a couple of other stories that were told to me about like, you know, I was too young to remember, about like some stuff. I don't know if they're like my mom's paranoia, but I think I trumped death a bunch of time. And I do believe I have, you know, I don't know what it is. It's like ancestral protection. I feel like I've been very lucky in my life. I feel like spoiled by the gods in many ways. And so part of my spiritual practice, well, what I call my spiritual practice, is to basically be grateful every day and thank them for basically like this kind of like I'm 40-year-old, so like those 40 years of having been blessed by all sorts of things, so I think that I don't know if like there is one major incident that shaped my life, but I know that part of, like I've always known that there was like something almost like a magical wave that one would be able to surf, and I've been surfing that wave on and off, and now I'm surfing it for that wave. It's like a whole. I've been surfing it, but like part of the work I have to do is just to be mindful of the fact that I would. It's like the Oscar, I wouldn't be able to do that alone. I want to thank, like my guides and the people on the other side were just like, allowing me to do this work, and it's fascinating. I've never been good at really anything, and so I'm the only thing I'm good at is reading cards, and the only thing I'm successful at is reading cards. So I know that it's not just, like there is like my role is to kind of like be a channel for other stuff that are somewhere behind. And so I'm grateful for that, having not only been gifted that role, but also having the ability to acknowledge it in my lifetime as well.
I wanted to share a little more about what is tarot really and how would you explain it to someone who's completely new or knows very little about it?
Yeah, well, I that's a very good question. Well, first, tarot is a game. Like let's just was to go back to like some factual. It's a game. It was very, very likely invented in Italy in the 15th century, so it's not a new thing. It's a game that was played for fun, for entertainment for centuries, and sometime in the 18th century, it was reclaimed, reinvented. Like we can use all sorts of words to explain what happened, but it was reinvented, hijacked from its first purpose as a game, and a couple of people first, and then a whole generation of scholars. So in it, a sort of illustrated sacred book that they claimed came from ancient Egypt, which is not historically true. It came from 15th century Italy, but people started to use the tarot and its iconography as a visual matrix for different layers of esoteric tradition. And so this game has been used as an initiatory device. Maybe it sounds a little too complicated for some people, I guess, to say this, but people saw it as like a meditation tool, initiatory device. And then what's interesting, it's from the 18th century to the 19th century to now, the 21st century. It's been all sorts of things. So people use it as a way to explain a sort of elevation of the soul. It is a game of the imagination, a book of study in which we can correlate all sorts of different stratas of philosophy, spiritual theory. It's a tool for introspection, which is what a lot of people work around these days. It's a healing tool to a certain extent, at least to me. It's a council of people that I enjoy consulting to either help guide people who come to seek for wisdom or just like concrete help. And for myself, it's been a helpful, how do you call that, pantheon of people that I've used for counseling for like many, many years. So yeah, that's like it can be all sorts of things. And I think this is what I'm seduced by. Like for me, tarot has a very strong sensory, sensual aspect, which is, I'm a Taurus. If you didn't guess that yet, I love objects. I love colors. I'm like obsessed by images, and so I'm like, and so like the tarot is the perfect tool for me. But it is what's interesting is like because it revolves around images and how beautiful they are. Like it's something that everyone can pick up and play with, so to speak. Specifically now that there is as many tarot decks as there is a human being in the world, basically, everyone can find a tarot deck that they will be able to connect with, and I think that what I'm interested in the tarot as an object, as a cultural object, but I also am interested in, which is kind of like the art historian part of me, was like interested in how that visual culture was translated in so many different aspects, and what those images mean or meant to mean at the time they were created, and I'm also interested in what they mean to us today, and how that culture is not only survive, but it is also reinvented every minute we exist. Like it's interesting to see, like the import of what I'm interested in, like now, is like the American tarot scholars, like Rachel Pollack, Mary Greer, Eden Gray, and it's like this new generation of women who kind of like rediscovered the tarot in a very different lens, coming from basically sometimes, not always, but sometimes from the counterculture, with the idea of like American counterculture, and how we, like the tarot readers of the 21st century, the millennials, we stand upon the shoulder of those lady giants, like, and there is not so much history about them. They are still, thank God, a lot of them are still alive, but like they are becoming history, and that history is just as important, I think, to kind of to keep and save as much as the 18th century stuff. Blah blah blah. So I don't know if that was a very elongated,
No, it's very interesting, and people who don't have a sense of what it really means will get like an introduction to it. But from it also comes another question: what's the most common misconception people have about divination and tarot? And I'm sure you get a lot of people who have negative ideas and are not very are very doubting.
Well, so like there is a whole laundry list that everyone knew, like like the future, all that stuff. I think that the most important, I want to debunk, because I think it's just really important, is that a tarot reader is your equal, and it will only have the power you allow them to have. And I really see so like in the realm of people wanting a guru, a person, like a person who is spiritually superior to kind of just like, surrender to, and just like drive their life. Well, I'm not that person. I have like my life with I have ailments, I have colds, I have emotions, and some of them are, negative, or, like, but and so like I think this is the important, the best a tarot reader, like, first, you be suspicious of anyone who pretend to have the keys to anything, because technically the keys, like a good spiritual mentor, so to speak, will just teach you how to find the keys within yourself. That's the ground rule. Second, I think that in the context of a reading, the reading is philosophical theater. It's an exercise of knowing and doubting. And so I like to say this to people when they come to see me. It's like, a tarot reading doesn't have to say the truth to be meaningful. Like my goal is not to be right. I'm not trying to be right. I might say stuff that won't happen, because it's not about necessarily saying the future, but they will cause, the things that I will say will probably cause an emotional reaction into you, the person, the querent. And that's what matters. If I tell you, Summer, if you come to me for a reading, and you're like, oh, Letty, I should start a podcast. What do you think? You're like, what? And tell you, like, Summer, I'm sorry, but the cards are like saying, like, no, you can't start a podcast. Like, something is like, you're going to meet too many technical obstacle, or like, and if you feel that it's not the right answer, that if you feel strongly, like, no, like, I don't, when I hear the tarot readers hear no, there is a feeling of revolt. I'm not agreeing with this answer. The emotion is more important than the answer. The emotion tells you, like, you're not agreeing with this, so you're going to do it. That emotion is the energy you're going to need to do the podcast. And you can harness this and then just actually prove me wrong. I'm not trying to be right. So the moment you say, like, fuck you, Letty, sorry, fuck you, Letty, I'm just going to do the podcast anyway. this is the moment you reclaim the agency, and for me that's the work that tarot does, you know. So like I do believe that sometimes people get lost in the reality of what a tarot reading can be. It's supposed to be it's a co-creating ritual, and the both of us are on the same level. If there is any superior part, it will be the card, but like us as human, me, I'm just a meat puppet, and my only goal is to help people. So that's the most important misconception, that the tarot reader is not more important than the card.
What is something which is very close to your heart, or what is something you are passionate about other than tarot? And I know art also now. So is there anything else?
I think community. This is I'm an introvert, so I do have limited bandwidth, but I think in the tarot and also not in the tarot, I think that I have this is a quote that I'm stealing from one of my favorite author, whose name is Anne Dufourmentel, French philosopher. Fortunately, she passed away around this time a couple of years ago. But she used to say, "I have the passion of friendship," and I think I have the passion of friendship. And obviously, I can't be friend with everyone, but I do like the idea that we can foster spaces for people to meet and foster this spirit of community. I do believe that I can be friend with people I don't agree with. I do believe that friendship, kindness, integrity, human integrity goes beyond moral values. And I like the idea that I'm trying to move more and more in those spaces and try to create those stuff. And then I like food. So like it's kind of it's related to. I like to go. This is my favorite thing to do, going to dinner with people and then getting to know them and having fun conversation. I'm like a real tourist for that. I like good food, good conversation, people who are passionate about anything interesting, you know, like whatever it is. I'm curious about everything. So if, you know, like if people are really interested in like, you know, fish taxonomy, you know, I'm going to be, or whatever, you know, like if the moment they start to talk about it and they're passionate, I feel keen to listen to them. So that's what I'm interested in.
Who has been the most influential person in your life, and how have they impacted you?
Oh, there was plenty of people, you know, like, I think that maybe I'll choose two. Rachel Pollack in the tarot department. I knew her a little bit. She was my friend. I met her. She used to live upstate, and she was very, very dear to me. And I think that her passion and her kindness was something that I was really inspired by. She was very intelligent, and she could be very critical, but she was never in judgment, you know. And that's something that fine line between knowing why you like and you dislike and being able to articulate why you are not interested or not necessarily, but without necessarily like being in a place of judgment. It was just something that was really inspiring to me. Like for me, she was like the she had this like elegance of the mind of making things that were very, very complex very, very simple. Yeah, she had a language for it. So definitely Rachel Pollack. She's on my shrine. She, you know, she's on my shrine, and I should probably put water on my shrine. Thinking about that. And the other, I think, is probably David Lynch. And I just like I'm saying that just because he passed recently, and because of his death, I got to kind of reassess how much influence he had in my life, and it turns out it's enormous. And I was really affected by his death, and I've loved a lot of artists. I love David Bowie, you know, and I do believe that David Bowie hopefully will pick me up when I die as like some kind of like archangel driving me to the afterlife, like Virgil. But I was not dead. I was not sad when he died, because I think that I was, you know, like my relationship to his art, I was unchanged. But David Lynch, there's something about how his work impacted me as a woman, a young woman, how it or managed to articulate some of the darker aspect of my femininity, how it taught me. I wrote an article about it in this great magazine, which is coming out, I think, in September, called Rebis. It's like a literary occult magazine. One of the things that I argue is how basically David Lynch allowed me to detach myself from the shackle of reason, like the need to explain everything, and how, like, it taught me how to be in the ambiguity of things, where things are unexplained. And in the context of a tarot reading, that place of not necessarily understanding, but feeling, sensing, rather than knowing, is a probably it's the place that I had to relearn how to go to. But that place, I learned how to be there as a teen girl watching Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway and all those films that are kind of like that have like a dream logic that escape regular narrative. So I think David Lynch is really up there in my heart. And so is Twin Peaks.
Is there any advice you would give your younger self looking back at your life now?
Yeah, everything is going to get better. Just be patient. Continue to read your books. Things are going to just it's not your time yet. Like be an introvert until you meet your people. And then they're coming. I think that this is the lesson for, like I was like a misfits when I was a kid, and like New York is a really misfits wonderland. We all end up in New York because we're all misfits. Yeah. And so I think that the idea of not finding your kindred spirit is something that a lot of people, battle, and I think the internet changed that a little bit. So again, with the idea of forming communities, the idea of not, like not knowing where are like-minded people is something that at some point with age you kind of like escape, and then you find your people. And so I think the faith in finding your people is something that I will share myself. And I think that, with the internet now, if you feel alone, just find your community. It's reachable.
I remember a couple of weeks back, someone said this to me, this older gentleman, and he was giving me very good advice from his life, just sharing. And he said that you'll find a lot of friends in life, but there'll come a time when you'll find your tribe, and that will be the people that will be very similar to you, and your tribe will go with you all through the end of your life. And it stayed with me a lot.
Yeah, it's true. And the tribe, like, so I'll just say this because I think it's true. Like tarot people are interesting. It's a really loyal community. What I love about that community is that like I get to meet people from all different generation. I have a lot of friends who are 70-plus-year-olds. I also have friends that are younger. I have friends from all across the board, different social stratas, different, like, and so there is something about like the idea of meeting people of all walks of life, which I think I really enjoy. And the thing is that tribe too is, like I know that my tribe is like sometimes like I do have friends in New York, but like a lot of my friends are in London, are in LA, or in France, or in Zurich, like, and so, like geographically we make it work, but there is a real loyalty. Once you find your tribe, like you can't undo it. The connection is strong.
What do you feel the purpose of life is for you? Or in other words, what do you feel is your personal quest in life?
This is a very funny question. I'm going to be very naughty answering this summer, and I don't want to sound depressing, but I think my purpose in life was to write that book, Tarot and Divination Card, and now my job is done. So everything is a gift. I think that I don't know if I'm very driven, so I'll just continue to do what I love, but I don't have any big ambition. Like I just think that was the thing I was supposed to leave behind, and the rest is like adding to things. But I think my purpose, I reached it. Now I can die. If tomorrow I'm like, I don't know, like the angel of death knocks at my door and tell me, Letty, your time is now, and I will be like, okay, well, you know what? I had a very fulfilling life, and I've loved immensely. I have given the best I could give. I've learned so many great stuff. I don't really care about the legacy. but you can take me. I've been an happy man. Let me just have like one last slice of cake, and and then we can go. I'll meet my creator anytime. So that's my answer.
It reminded me actually of a quote, and I might not be saying it correctly, but I read this somewhere, and it goes that how do you know that your purpose on life is finished? And the answer is that if you're alive, it isn't.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe my purpose is to eat more cake. So, if they're keeping me down there, it means that somehow I have to just try all the cake flavors that are in existence, all the desserts in existence on this planet, and mission. I will mission accepted. I will do that for the sake.
If it were an ideal world, what does that look like in your eyes?
I mean, I'm gonna sound like so silly, but like I was just like, I think people should, like understand the harm they can cause. So if they had like an understanding, an inner understanding of the harm they can cause, to anonymous others, I think people would behave differently. And so I just want, I'm not saying that everyone has to get along, but like the level of cruelty and that is going on, especially now, it's hard to stomach. And I do believe that the work I'm doing, like because I'm doing it now and I'm doing it with the people I'm doing, I do feel like there is a little bit of activism linked in it. I do believe that the work of tarot is an empowering people that are marginalized or hurt specifically by the ins and out of what's happening is, like it is personally part of one of the things I contribute. But yeah, I just wish things were not so hard, that people had more empathy and they could just feel what they do.
Another question came to my mind, and we don't have to keep it if you don't want to answer it. But at the beginning of the interview, you told us that you were born Catholic, and I've always noticed that sometimes religion or the religious community is not comfortable with energy and psychic senses and all this side of things. So I wanted to know your perspective on that. How did you balance it in your life?
The thing is, like I'm, look at me, look at me, Summer. When I enter into church, everyone is, surprised, and so I'm, like that part of my spiritual life. It's it's something that I cultivate really, not necessarily in the church with a big C, but like with I'm not part of a Catholic community. I don't, I go to usually I go to the Easter Mass, but I don't have a parish or anything. Being a French person and knowing, like having been traveling into a rural area, I also know that there is a great deal, like in Mediterranean countries, Italy, Spain, France, southern France, there is a great deal of magic being done, and it's Catholic, but it's like witchcraft, like and then like, I've studied that at some point because that was just really interesting. But some of the practice we take for granted, the rosary. The rosary is like I can't remember exactly, but I think the rosary was an accepted practice starting the 14th century or something, only because a lot of people were doing it in France. And the church was like, okay, should we tell people it's like not good to do that, or well, it's just like no, like let's just okay, we'll just say we're okay with it, and then we embrace it, and then and so like now, but it was not always the case, like there is like in certain country there is in Mexico, for example, there is a great deal of folk magic that is Catholic, and so I don't necessarily think for me, like there is the liturgy and the church, the official, but like people do have home altars and they have like they own their own practice. And I think that the moment you reclaim that part of your spirituality, whether it is Catholic or Jewish or like there is there a lot of like monotheistic religion do have like practice of folk magic linked to them, and for the longest time, like people turn a blind eye under it because it was just that's what people do. That's what people do. You don't want to bother God for, like some, like it's so like you'll ask a saint, So I think, personally, I think that I enjoy researching this. I think that it's a more normalized practice that we believe into.
What is something that you would like the world to know about you, which you feel is often misunderstood?
I have a lot of interests. So I have I'm interested in like Renaissance art. I'm interested in, all things that are highbrow, intellectual history and, stuff like that. But I'm also interested in pop culture. And like a lot of very often people see the book I wrote and they were like, I won't say more about this, but once I came, I went to work to do a lecture in an institution that shall not be named, and then the person who received me told me, oh, I thought you were older. Like it's so funny to meet you. I thought you were older, and of course, like the book I wrote doesn't look like me. It looks like, I guess, a very smart person wrote it. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is the idea that curiosity can lead you to like paths that are considered elitist or abstract or out of reach because you need to be in the know. But there is a lot to be said about the cultural products that we are witnessing today: comics, cinema, genre literature, and the fact that culture is not vulgar and that culture speaks as much about herself as cultures as the Renaissance painting. And I'm interested in that. And so I think that I like the idea of that, part of my role is to reconcile those, that everyone should be both good taste and bad taste.
From your entire journey in life so far, what would you like to share with our listeners which you feel would be helpful to them?
Read books, even if you're a slow reader. Read books, buy them, but don't stop. Buying them is not reading them. Like wake up earlier and take the time to read them. I'm a slow reader. I'm sure I have also I have a lot of like attention disorder and stuff. But I wake up very early in the morning so I can just have the quiet time that I need to be able to read. And I'm not a fast reader, so like it takes me 10 days to read 300 pages. Like I just like. But I think this is one of the most important gift we have. Like we have that gift of having been given the power to read, and everything, is there for us to grasp. So take time to read books.
So that was my last question. I wanted to say thank you so much, Laetitia. It was my pleasure to have you on my podcast and for enriching my life and changing it with being who you are. So thank you.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you so much, Summer, for having me.